Good Sunday afternoon, everybody. This is Rav Desai with the tropical weather update for October 7th, 2018. And we got a lot to talk about today as we do have a lot going on in both basins of the tropics, the Atlantic and in the East Pacific. As you can see, we have Hurricane Sergio, now Category 2 in the East Pacific, and we have newly formed Tropical Storm Michael just east of the Yucatan Peninsula. That was the potential tropical cyclone yesterday, which has now developed into a tropical storm. And we do still have Tropical Storm Leslie meandering in the central Atlantic, as it has been for about 2 weeks now and will continue to do so for several days to come. Now, taking a look at the Atlantic for today, the 5-day outlook, you can see we do have another disturbance. This is Invest 92L. This is just southeast of the Azores Islands up here, but it's only a 30% chance of development within the next 5 days. It's probably not likely that it will develop. However, we'll be heading towards the east and may bring some heavy rain to areas of southern Spain and in northern Africa in countries such as Morocco and Algeria within the next several days. And of course, we do have Michael here, newly designated tropical storm, and we still have Leslie, of course. But first, if we do take a look at the East Pacific, Hurricane Sergio is now a Category 2 hurricane. It has winds of 105 miles per hour. And you can see on the satellite imagery, though, it still is looking very organized. It has a very large eye now, but it is still looking quite organized, but it's forecast to start weakening as it is heading into some more unfavorable conditions. If you take a look at the 5-day cone, however, you can see that's about to make that turn, that sharp turn north and east, and then it will be heading straight into beeline basically for the Baja Peninsula of Mexico, and it will be impacting that region as a moderate, probably a moderate tropical storm. So they definitely should be watching for that system for Sergio, and you can see on the model track that all the models do have it making landfall on the Baja Peninsula, somewhere right around this region where my mouse is at the moment. And it will be reaching the area in about 5 days' time. So it's definitely going to impact some form of land. However, their strength is still uncertain. But most of the models do have it still at tropical storm strength in around day 5, which is when it would be making landfall or close to landfall. So those areas should definitely be preparing for this system. Now, if you look at Tropical Storm Leslie in the central Atlantic, Leslie has been continuing to move to the east and is starting to drift a little bit south too. So it's continuing to move southeast. And it is not looking less and less organized as time goes on, as it is encountering some unfavorable conditions, some cooler waters and higher wind shear. But despite that, it's still forecast to remain a tropical storm at least for the next 5 days, as it's going to be weakening somewhat, but then it'll be strengthening once again. Once it around day 4 or so, once it reaches this area, we'll be encountering some more favorable conditions. And then beyond that, it's still uncertain as to where exactly it's going to go. It may still impact land in some form, even if it's not tropical. It may impact areas of Europe or Africa as an extratropical cyclone. But we're definitely going to be talking about Leslie still for many days to come, that's for sure. But if we take a look at the main story for today, of course, that would be newly designated Tropical Storm Michael, which is currently a 40-mile-an-hour tropical storm. And you can see on the satellite imagery that it's starting to get its act together slowly, but definitely surely. There's a lot of thunderstorm activity. A very heavy thunderstorm activity was there earlier, but has now died down. But it's probably going to fire up again later tonight as we head into that diurnal maximum. And you can see, though, that the center circulation is not exposed whatsoever, as there are thunderstorms completely surrounding the center, which is definitely a good sign. It indicates that this system will probably be strengthening in the near future. If you take a look at the current conditions, the wind shear map, you can see that Michael is currently under some pretty heavy wind shear, about 25 to 30 knots. Which is unfavorable for cyclone development. But yeah, it was still able to get its act together. So if it's still able to get its act together in these conditions, then it definitely could continue to strengthen, especially once the wind shear does start to die down, as there's an area of some lower wind shear that is entering the Gulf of Mexico from the north. And so once that reaches the Gulf, and then once Michael starts heading up north into the Gulf, then it will definitely be likely that Michael will be able to strengthen even quite a bit. Some models do have it getting pretty strong there, which we will talk about in a bit. If we look at the water temperatures right now, the sea surface temperatures for the Caribbean, Atlantic, and the Gulf of Mexico. You can see that basically the entire Gulf is very warm right now. It's basically bath water at this moment. We have temperatures up to 30.5 degrees Celsius, which is about 87 degrees Fahrenheit. And so much of this area is basically waters of the upper 80s, which is more than enough to sustain tropical cyclone development. Usually, waters of above 26 degrees Celsius or more, which would equate to about 82 degrees Fahrenheit, is more than enough for tropical cyclone development. And so because of this, Michael is definitely likely to be strengthening in this area. If we do take a look at the official 5-day cone, you can see that the NHC does have Michael slowly strengthening over the next couple of days. Probably not going to strengthen much until at least it gets into the central Gulf of Mexico sometime Tuesday morning into Tuesday afternoon, as it will be still under that high wind shear for another couple of days. And then, however, after that, it will be basically going off to the races, as it can definitely rapidly intensify in this area with the warm waters and the lower wind shear as it starts to approach land. And the NHC does have it making landfall as an 80-mile-an-hour hurricane somewhere here along the Florida Panhandle region. And then whatever's left of it, the remnants would be heading into the Carolinas and then through the mid-Atlantic, and then it would be heading out to sea. And you can also see we do have the tropical storm warnings right now up for the Yucatan Peninsula and areas of western Cuba and the region here. And if we take a look at the forecast positions and the max winds from the Hurricane Center, the discussion for, well, this was when it was still Tropical Depression 14. This was only just recently designated to Michael at 1 p.m., I believe, Eastern time. And so we can see, though, however, that it does have it peaking at 80 miles an hour just before it makes inland, but there's the potential for even further strengthening than that. And you'll see that once we do look at the computer models, and then once it does make landfall, of course, it will start weakening. Now, if you look at the track models, the track guidance, you can see that most of the models are in agreement that it's going to be making landfall somewhere in Florida. Only one model does not have it making landfall in Florida, but even then it would still be bringing impacts to the western Florida panhandle. And the exact area of landfall is still uncertain, but it could be anywhere from around the Pensacola region to the Big Bend area of the Florida panhandle. And then after that, it will be heading through Georgia, South Carolina, and North Carolina, and then we'll most likely be heading out to sea. However, there is a possibility that it could stay over the waters here of the Atlantic, just offshore of the Carolinas, and that would be even worse for them. Or it would be bad either way, because they'll be getting more rain that they do not need because they had so much rain from Florence. As we saw, areas of had up to 30 plus inches of rain from Hurricane Florence, which was only like about 3-4 weeks ago now. And now they'll be getting even more rain. It's definitely not good news for that area, and especially not if this thing stays just slightly offshore, as it'll be able to maintain its strength further too. And so then there'll also be the wind impact. If you look at the intensity guidance, you can see that most of the models do have it reaching hurricane strength now. Actually, only some models don't have it approaching that strength at all. But the majority does have it peaking at around a moderate Category 1 hurricane with winds maybe around 70 knots. But again, there is definitely the potential for further strengthening even beyond that. But at the very least, that Florida should be expecting at least a minimal hurricane. It should be at least preparing for a hurricane, that's for sure. Now, if you take a look at the European model, ECMWF, the 12Z run, you can see that it does have Michael strengthening as it starts to head further north. And actually has it bombing out to 965 millibars and then 950 millibar hurricane. This would be probably a major hurricane, actually Category 3, just before landfall. And then, of course, it does head through the Carolinas and then up through the northeast as it heads out to sea. And definitely, if it does get to this point, then that area will definitely be experiencing some very severe and catastrophic impacts if it does approach Category 3. But the effects will be bad regardless. But this is definitely a warning signal. So it's definitely a bad look, as the European model is generally considered the most accurate of our computer models that we have, the main models, as it's been right with many of the storms that we've seen in the past several years. It's been quite accurate, definitely with a lot of the tracks. With the intensity, maybe not as much because the intensity forecasts are not as accurate as the track forecast. At the moment, we don't have that technology quite yet. But with the track forecast, this definitely has been right. And so, if this would definitely be a very bad situation for the Florida Panhandle and the Gulf Coast, if it does come in, even as like a Category 2, it would be a bad situation. But especially if it comes as a major hurricane. And if we compare that to what the GFS model shows, you can see that GFS also has Michael strengthening quite a bit, and it has an even it has a strong system as well, 953 millibar hurricane. Again, that'll be probably a low end Category 3 hurricane, but just because it's a low end Category 3, that's still a Category 3, still a major hurricane, still a very bad situation. I mean, you did see what Florence did in the Carolinas. It's just a Category 1 hurricane, so even just a Category 1 is nothing to sneeze at. It's still going to be a pretty severe situation. And it has made making landfall somewhere in the western Florida panhandle, and then the remnants of the system will be moving through the northeast, bringing some unneeded rain again to that area. And if you look at the FV3 GFS as well, you can see it shows a similar situation, it has landfall in a similar location, a little bit weaker system, but still strong nonetheless, 960 millibars, which will probably be a high-end Category 2. And then again, it does have the remnants going through the northeast. And we can also look at the UNAM model. This is a near-range model. It's not really a tropical model, but you can still see what it does show over the next 84 hours. And you can see it does have Michael. It does have Michael approaching the Florida coast, but then it does have it making more of a sharp eastward turn as it does start to approach Florida. So whether it does that or not, that will be interesting to see. But regardless, somewhere in Florida is definitely going to be impacted by Michael. That's for sure. Now, let's take a look at the current conditions throughout the Northeast. You can see that the conditions are pretty nice. There's not really any rain to talk about at the moment, which is good because we're going to get some rain in the next several days, and a lot of it, that's for sure, especially with if the remnants of Michael do end up coming around. And if we take a look at the rain forecast for the region, you can see that it does stay dry for the next couple of days, which is some good news, but then we have some very heavy rain starting to approach the area from Thursday onwards. And then Friday, we do have the rains from Michael, which will be impacting Maryland into southern New Jersey with some very heavy rain indicated by these orange and these red colors. And then once Michael moves through, however, it does look clear again, but it will be cooler. And if we look at the total rainfall forecast, you can see that Michael will be dumping quite a bit of rain in this region. It does seem like the heaviest rain will stay offshore, at least as of now. But you can see that it does dump a good 3 to 4, even up to 5 inches in some areas here in extreme southern New Jersey, in the Cape May area, and in areas of the Delmarva Peninsula and the Chesapeake Bay region. There's areas of up to 4 to 5 inches. And these areas have already been so saturated from all the rain this past summer and even fall. And this is definitely going to cause some flooding concerns, that's for sure. If you take a look at the temperatures also for the next several days, you can see that it's going to be definitely staying warm through the rest of this week. At least Monday stays a little bit cooler. But then we got some warm weather coming back Tuesday into Wednesday with temperatures back into the mid 80s for much of the region. The summer-like weather is not going to be going away just yet. But then after Thursday, that does seem to be the last summer-like day for the region, as we do have the cold front and we have the remnants of Michael moving through at the same time. So that will be bringing cooler conditions for Friday into the weekend with fall-like temperatures finally approaching where we have temperatures of mostly into the 40s and the 50s. That's all for today. Thanks for watching and stay safe, everybody.